Today and tomorrow mark two significant, well, one's an anniversary and one is, it's a 3-month recall. And just to throw those out you don't need any commentary. Today is January 6th, and 3 years ago, on January 6th, our Congress was attacked by citizens of our country. And January 7th marks 3 months since Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, on Shabbat, on Shmini Atzeret. And being Americans and being Jews and lovers of Israel, let's just take a moment to personally reflect on these 2 attacks which certainly have changed our lives. So, question, would you support, don't get nervous, I'm not going to talk politics, would you support a candidate or feel comfortable with a candidate to be a leader of your people who grew up as the rich in the richest family in town, in the country, who can't relate to suffering of the common folk? Would you feel comfortable with a leader whose parentage was not even clear, not quite sure who their parents are? A candidate whose sister writes a tell-all book about them. A candidate whose brother blindly follows them. A candidate who doesn't seem to pay much attention to his wife and children, who is admittedly not a great speaker. You like this person so far? Who abandons his followers for 6 weeks, disappears, and tells unbelievable stories about what happened while he was away, and killed a person. Sounds good so far? This is Moshe. This is Moshe. Grew up in the richest house in town. Grew up in Pharaoh's palace. Wasn't clear who his parents are. His sister Miriam told lots of nice stories about him, not so nice. His brother just seems to follow whatever he says. Says he's not a great speaker. He left for 40 days. What happened to the guy? And what a story he told when he came back. How about that story about the bush that talked? He killed a person. He saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating on an Israelite slave, and he killed him. And yet, probably the greatest leader history has ever known. We'll talk about why. But this might sound familiar, I've shared before, a book that really inspired me by an author named Bruce Feiler, who first became famous by writing a book called Walking the Bible, which he just followed the Bible, stories just went around, found places that the Bible describes. He also wrote a book which inspired a television show a few years ago. But the book which really impressed me is called Moses, America's Prophet, or rather America's Prophet, Moses and the American Story. He says, America is fascinated with Moshe. And not because of those other things we're talking about, but because of the things that we are impressed by. You know, it's interesting, sometimes we say we're living in a Christian country, and maybe it would be just strange for Christian leaders to compare themselves to Jesus, but comparing themselves to Moses, that they can get away with. And just about every great story in the history of America brings Moses into it. This is what Bruce Feiler talks about. When Columbus sailed the ocean blue, he likens himself to Moses, crossing the sea. And the same was true with the Pilgrims of 1620. Look at that, we're crossing the sea. The founding fathers were very moved by Moses. In fact, we're told that at George Washington's first inauguration, the new president likened himself not to Moses, but to Joseph. And in fact, when Joseph once says to his brothers, "Am I a substitute for God?" quotes the Bible. But when Washington died, among the eulogies about George Washington, he was called a new Moses, a Moses of our generation. He came from a new Goshen called Virginia. And England was compared to Egypt and King George to Pharaoh. We also know, of course, about Moses from further generations. Many know that Harriet Tubman was called Moses, freed the slaves. And certainly, what were the slaves and abolitionists singing on the road to freedom? Let my people go. Some of us sit at the Seder tables, we sing, Let my people go. And we say, oh, look at this great song from the 19th century America that we bring to our Seder. It comes from Exodus. Shalach et ami. Those were Moses' words. This one I didn't know, but in Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom, a rescuer of slaves, is buried in secret. Heard that before, buried in secret. In the words of Harriet Beecher Stowe, there is no monument to mark the last resting place of our friend. The Lord knows where he lies. Sounds like the end of Deuteronomy, and Uncle Tom may be modeled after Moses. Of course, Abraham Lincoln, associated with Moses as well. And one of the things that Filer points out is that Moses is known not just for freeing the slaves, for bringing people from slavery to freedom, but also for being the one who delivers the law. And so we are a country which believes in freedom and also in law, beginning with the Mayflower Compact for those who saw themselves as similar to what Moshe had done, finding freedom in a new country, to the Constitution, to the Emancipation Proclamation, and so on and so forth. And so Filer also points out, this one, again, easy to miss and interesting to find, that think about the Statue of Liberty. And what do you picture the Statue of Liberty? What do you picture Miss Liberty holding? A torch. And what else is she holding? In other, a book. In fact, a stone tablet. Interesting. Filer points out that in 1881, significant year in Jewish history, it's a year when the Tsar was killed in Russia, and it led to a lot increased anti-Semitism, and this is when the big immigration wave begins, 1881 to 1920. There is a cartoon in the U.S. depicting Uncle Sam splitting the Atlantic Ocean to allow people to come to freedom. You can't miss what that image is. And so on and so forth. Of course, Martin Luther King, President Obama, and candidate Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and others using references to Moshe, to bringing freedom, to bringing what our people deserve. In fact, it was also read that in the film, the documentary, The Making of the President, in 1964, that President Johnson was compared to Joshua taking the reins of leadership now that Moshe has died. So what do we do with all this? We say Moses is a fascinating character. And Moses is fascinating in America, and maybe Americans have forgotten that, and it's time that we can tell them. But why do we like Moses? Not about all the issues that I mentioned at the beginning, and some of the questionable things about Moshe. Moshe speaks out when there is injustice. This is what I wrote about in the blurb in this week in the email. Moshe, whether he knew he was an Israelite, or he discovered it at the time, or he just said, these are going to be my people because people who are suffering need my help. And that makes Moshe a great hero, not only for us as Jews, but as Americans as well. Moshe speaks out. And Moshe is humble. Moshe is the one, when God speaks to him, he says, I'm the wrong person. Wouldn't it be nice to have leaders who tell us how humble they are? I'm the wrong person. Don't take me. Take somebody else. And that's exactly what makes him the right person, because He is so humble. He knows what's right. He does it because he needs to step up to be the leader. So remind ourselves and remind our neighbors, we're looking for a leader, we're looking for a hero. This is a good place to start. Look for someone who embodies the attributes of Moshe, who cares about freedom, who cares about justice, who cares about law. And in this case, also one who certainly, we can question his family life, but certainly was willing to put the needs of the community far above his own. Let's hope and pray that we restore this kind of leadership throughout our community, our country, and throughout the world, and learn and be inspired from Parshat Shemot. Shabbat Shalom.